So, alright, in part 2 of the movie, or this video, what we're going to do is actually get our legs and our motors mounted onto our base plate, which we soldered our ESCs to last time. So what we're going to need is the bottom plate with the ESCs already soldered on. I have the model with the landing legs, so we're going to need those 4 landing legs. It's just easier to put them on now. Our 4 motors, our actual legs for each side, so you should have 2 of each color. We're going to need our hardware, so for the motors, what we're going to use is I'm going to use the button head ones for each one of the motors. And then for the landing legs, so if you don't have long landing legs so you can have your gimbal underneath, there's a package with the black hex screws that you'll want to use to mount your legs to this plate. That's a little bit shorter. If you get the legs like I have, it'll come with longer ones. So they're slightly longer. You want to use those because of the extra thickness added by those legs themselves. Additionally, what we're going to need is a good Allen wrench. I actually use 2 since a lot of this Chinese hardware tends not to be sized quite right. I find my Allen keys or Allen wrenches tend to strip out quite easily. So I use one that's generally not in the best of shape. Once in a while I'll go and grind down the ends so I get back into good material. But then I always have a second one that I'm very careful with not to let slip in the bolt heads. That way it doesn't get stripped out. Then finally some Loctite. I always like to use Loctite on anything that could have any sort of vibration in it. That way you don't have to worry about it coming apart. For Revice Loctite, make sure you get the type that's marketed as removable. If you get the non-removable, you may or may not be able to ever get your parts, may or may not ever be able to disassemble your parts. Generally non-removable, you got to heat it significantly to about 500 degrees before the Loctite will release. So word of caution there, make sure you have the removable type. Alright, so first step we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start mounting my motors to the legs. It's pretty straightforward. You have the 4 holes here. Look in the bottom of your motors, you have the 4 holes here. Now it would have been nice if you wanted to run all your wiring underneath the legs to feed the motor wires through one of these holes here. However, if you notice, these aren't laid out in a perfect square, and neither are your motors. Unfortunately, the way these wires exit the side of the motor here, you have to mount it with the wires either coming straight out or like that. So I would assume most people would choose to route them down the leg this way. If you try to put the motor or the wires going this direction and down through those holes, you'll only be able to line up 2 of your motor mounts. I don't believe you'd want to actually operate with just 2 motor mounts. Another thing I like to do with my Loctite is I'll put some Loctite just on a piece of paper. That way I can dip each individual bolt into the Loctite versus trying to apply Loctite from the tube onto the bolt. Just a practice I like. That way you don't get a whole lot of Loctite in the bolt, because you want it to stay on your bolts and not get into, per se, your motors. So we'll go ahead and start the assembly process. So first thing we want to do is get 4 of your bolts here, the button heads for our first motor. A long Allen wrench is nice for this particular activity. That way it's just easier to tighten down initially. So take your motor, line up your motor mounts, kind of look at it, give it a look. As you lay it on there, turn it upside down, you can kind of look at it and line all your motor mounts up. So I'm lucky. These button heads tend to stick to this Allen wrench, so that's a good thing. We just put a little dab. That's actually way too much on there. Just a little dab of Loctite's all it takes. Line up your first motor mount hole here. And with the longer ones, it's nice because I can turn it very easily. And not having to fight that, so you have to reposition your wrench each time. When you do your first, as you do these, don't tighten them all the way down, because you'll just have to go back and loosen them up as you put in the rest of the motor mount. So you want to get each one started. And then you can go back and tighten them up. So as you get after you get all four of them in there, go ahead and snug them down all the way. And then I'll take my good Allen wrench and just take them up to their final torque. Two things: you don't have to He-man these things in here. They're relatively small. They don't take a whole lot of torque to keep them secured. Plus, with additional Loctite, that'll help keep them in place. So just snug them down. Don't put your muscles on and try to tighten them down to the bolts sink into the plastic. Nice and secure is all you need. And they'll stay put. So there it is. Shouldn't have any movement in the motor. Line up nice and secure to the leg. So I'll go ahead and do the remainder. Make any sort of mistake. Alright, so the next step is you got to figure out how you want to orient your lower board here. Do you want these tabs going with the aircraft, so this being the front, this being the rear, or do you want them to go out the sides? I've seen pictures of mounted both ways. What I'm going to do with mine is go ahead and mount it front and back. My theory is if I want to mount a gimbal, this will hang out a little bit past everything, so I can hang the gimbal off of here, and then my battery will lie in this region here. I'm going to put my battery on the bottom plate. I've seen a lot of pictures with them on the top. Seems just to me, keep the battery lower, keep your center of gravity lower, should make the craft a little bit more stable. So for this one, like I said, if you're going to use the landing legs so you can mount the gimbal underneath, you're going to want to use the longer hardware that came with it. So as we put each one of these on, we're going to do these, put the legs, the landing legs, and the motor arms on at the same exact time. So a little bit more Loctite, and then we'll do those. What you're going to want to do is put two of the white ones on this side, put your white ones on this side, red ones on this side. That way, as you're flying, you can use the visual reference of the red and white for front and back of the aircraft. Doesn't matter what you want. You make the white the front, the red the front. Doesn't matter. It's up to you. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and make my white legs the front of the aircraft, the red ones the back of the aircraft. But you can even, through the programming, you can make the aircraft go whichever direction you want. So, as we look on our plate here, we have these holes on the outside. Here we'll have 4 holes. What we're going to use is these 2 ones here. That fits our design. So once again, dab of Loctite. So I'll go ahead and put my bolt through there first. Then line it up with a lower plate, or a hole in the lower plate here. So we can feed it through. As you can see, coming through just a little bit. That's what we want. And then you're going to take your legs. So we said this is going to be the front. And we're going to, so your legs have 4 holes in the top, that's for your upper mount, and then 2 in the bottom, so that's the bottom of it. So line up these 2 holes with here, and getting your first bolt started could be a little bit difficult, but after you get it started, second one should go easier. So, got that started. Make sure you're not pinching your ESC power cables, and then you can do the second one pretty easily. Once again with these ones, don't over tighten them, snug them down, use a little bit of Loctite, they'll stay put where they need to be. So, that's what it looks like. The lower leg, what goes through it, in through this plate, and then into here. So there's your lower leg. As the aircraft says, it'll kind of look like that, and our top plate will bolt onto here. So, you go through and do the remainder of the legs. Alright, so there you have it. We've got our legs mounted, and that's starting to look like a quadcopter. So, you notice our ESCs are on the bottom, and our motors are on the top. So what we can do here is down through the webbing and the legs, just go ahead and feed your wires down through there. Pretty straightforward. Try to keep them as neat as possible, and then depending on the ESCs you have, mine don't have any extra wires on them. Just plug in each one of your legs into your ESC. At this point in time, it does not really matter which wire goes where. All the ESCs come initially programmed to rotate rotate the motors in the same direction. So just go ahead and plug them all in exactly the same. As you get ready to program your circuit board, if you need to change the direction of one of your motors, all you do is switch 2 of the wires on your ESC, and that will cause the motor to spin the opposite direction. So, one additional thing you're going to want is, so the kit came with a bunch of zip ties, so now would be a great time to start using some of them. So as we get our motors mounted up, go ahead and zip tie your ESCs to the legs. So you just want to try to find a good spot for them, somewhere in the middle. You don't want to have a whole lot of tension on your cables, so you want to have enough play on them where you can move them around if necessary. So. Like so. Clip off the tail. And there you go. ESC's mounted up to your quadcopter. Nice and clean. You can adjust it back and forth a little bit if you want. And if you really feel a need, you can add another zip tie on there to hold it even more securely. But judging by the looks of it, I don't think you'll need them. Alright, so there you have it. We've got our arms with each one of our motors mounted up. We've added our landing legs so we can have a gimbal in the future if we want. And I've gone through and we've actually connected our ESCs to our motors and our main board. So everything's wired up now. So this is kind of what it looks like on the bottom. On the legs, you only use these two holes. They've got a universal set so they go any lower. One thing I did notice, these holes aren't machined exactly. So as the bolt goes through all three of these different pieces, not everything lines up perfectly. Creates a little bit of tension on the bolt. So as you're putting that in there, just make sure it's not cross-threaded. It's not that bad, but it could cause you a little bit of headaches. But yeah, so make sure everything's connected. You can go back through with your Allen wrench on each one of your bolts. Make sure each one of them's tight and you didn't miss anything. Then check each one of your motors and make sure everything's tight there. So that's it for this video. As we move to our next video, we'll actually take our top plate and we'll get it mounted up. If all goes well, everything should line up like it's supposed to. And we'll get our electronics mounted to it. And there's not a whole lot left to do as far as building the craft itself. Everything else is going to be a matter of programming and getting it to work. So, till next time.